All right, and we are live. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori, and I am so excited to have this author interview. I have, as a guest on the channel today, the lovely Jacquelyn Hagen. I suppose I didn't ask you beforehand, do you prefer Jacquelyn, Jackie? Is there...
Anything is fine. I do usually get called Jackie, so Jackie's cool.
Jackie's great. Okay. So yeah, Jackie is one of my fellow Spiffbo 9 competitors and the author of the absolutely fabulous indie fantasy novel, The Wickwire Watch. So excited to talk about this book. Jacquelyn, welcome to the channel. Do you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm Jacquelyn Hagen. I am the author of the Riverfall Chronicles, the first book of which is The Wickwire Watch. And the elevator pitch is that it is a story about a boy who finds himself one day being hunted down by dark spirits he didn't know existed. And the only people who can keep him safe are a group of fugitives on the run. So he has to figure out who to trust, which way to go, where to throw in his lot. Yeah, that's about it.
I am very excited to get into chatting about Mr. Featherfield at some point soonish here, because there's a lot there. Yeah, so Andrew, obviously Andrew's in the chat. So hello, Andrew.
Andrew.
Andrew, you should be reading this book. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so I want to start with kind of where your writing journey started. Is that something that you've always been a writer since childhood? Did you grow up reading? Like, where did that kind of originate?
So yes, always been into stories. As a child, I did do a lot of writing, short stories, coming up with little skits and plays I would put on sometimes. And then when I got a little bit older, it was poetry and fan fiction. And I was really kind of a melodramatic ham.
Same.
I have my very super introverted, like reserved personality, but if you get to know me, I can be really silly. And that came out into a period of time where I thought I wanted to be an actor or an actress.
Nice.
And I wanted to be in all the plays and do all that. And it turns out in the end, I'm not really a great actress. I'm just good at being a ham, which is not the same thing. But that got translated in, like I mentioned, putting on plays and writing those kind of things. And once we got a tape recorder into the house, it turned into let's do like radio shows and things.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, when someone in my friend group got a video camera, well then it was films and skits.
So you just kept leveling up.
Exactly. Yeah, I kept leveling up. So.
Yeah. So did you ever do any plays or theater? Like, what did you try it?
On a very basic level. So I think I remember one of the first things I used my allowance for when I was a preteen was to save it and then enroll in an acting class in our local community, like theater.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. I did that. And then in 9th grade, I took drama and I did that. As far as being in any actual plays, the only one was I was in a production of The Jungle Book, which was being directed by my cousin. So bless his heart, he decided to cast me and actually a couple other of my sisters. So, so we got to, I think we were all wolves. We were in the wolf pack.
Nice. I mean, if you're going to be in the Jungle Book, the wolf pack is a good place to be.
That was a lot of fun, but ultimately I decided being on stage wasn't, even though that was a manifestation of my desire to be part of stories. I just hadn't figured out exactly how.
Yeah, hadn't found your medium yet.
Exactly.
Nice. So we're going to talk a little bit about your influences, and I want to dive into that a little bit more in a bit. But, let's just go into that right now. We're going to... Who needs a script? So I want to talk a little bit about your influences. So what were some of the films and books and authors that really inspired you that you loved to read when you were younger or watch?
When I was young, number one, and by now it's just cliche for people to say, but it's still the truth. I loved and still love the Chronicles of Narnia. C.S. Lewis, huge
yeah.
for me. and made even more important to me when I saw the BBC television production.
Oh yes.
When I don't know how old I was when those came out, but I was like, the books were. I think I saw those first before I got the book series.
Okay.
I believe that's the order it happened in, but I was just instantly in love and entranced and like, what is this? I want this.
Yes.
And it just snowballed from there. So that was the big one. And then, by the way, I still love watching those serials. I have them on DVD. They're so old and so hokey, but
they're
so faithful to the book, and the acting is great, and I just love it. And then from there, I kind of went to other kind of British literature and TV shows and movies. I just moved that way. So then it became like Wallace and Gromit. I love Wallace and Gromit. And like when I got a little older, I think all my friends were watching like Saved by the Bell, and this is like the movies and that kind of stuff. And I'm now watching like Remains of the Day and like Francis Farrelly's Hamlet, like stuff, kind of obscure stuff like this. And then another big one for me, especially when I was a teenager, was Ang Lee's version of Sense and Sensibility, 1955.
Yes.
Kate Winslet, Emma Thompson.
Alan Rickman, all day.
My teenage crush was Hugh Grant.
Yep.
It was
okay.
Yeah, for a long time. And but those were so important to me, and I fell in love with the language and the time period and everything about it. So yeah, I moved into this like Anglophile thing. And then from there, like I fell in love with British TV shows like Fawlty Towers, Blackadder, Vicar of Dibley. There's a lot of them. There's a ton of them. I love British humor.
Yes.
And yeah, and then I guess other books I would say that were big for me as a kid were things like Roald Dahl, like James and the Giant Peach. I loved the Chronicles of Prydain, The Black Cauldron. That was another big one for me. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes. Oh, I love it. And it's funny because this is why I love, having read the book and then getting to meet the author. And like, as you're saying all of these things, I can see where all of those influences led you to where the Wickwire Watch is. And that's really cool. And this kind of goes, it's a sort of an influence. Have you seen the old black and white, is it black and white? Maybe it isn't. The old Oliver Twist musical. I'm trying to remember what it's from, like the 50s or 60s, I think.
Do you remember who was in it?
Yeah, so the Artful Dodger is one of my favorite fictional characters, so Inkwell was not a tough step for me. Yeah. And Jack Wilde, who played the Artful Dodger in that Oliver Twist, is still one of my favorite performances ever by a child actor.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were thinking of the same movie. So you're talking about Oliver has that exclamation.
Yeah, yep.
Love that movie. It's on my shelf. I put it in regularly, and Jack Wilde 100% was the inspiration for Inkwell. 100%.
I love it. I love it so much. It was funny because as I was reading the book and like getting into Inkwell's perspective, I was like, man, like I'm just getting massive Jack Wilde vibes from this. So that makes me really happy. It's coming through. So, okay, backtracking a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. The first spark of an idea for Wickwire Watch. So you have all of this just awesome Anglophile like influence driving you, and then fantasy influences, and then somewhere the idea for Wickwire Watch comes in.
Yes. So for some reason, up until very, very recently, I never had it in my head like, oh, I'm going to be an author. I want to be a novelist. That was never there. But that being said, I have always written stories. I've always just been writing something, or I had this idea or the scene I couldn't get out of my head, and I had to go write it down. All throughout my life. But then in 2008, when I joined the military, I I went to basic training 2008, and then 2009 I was sent to tech school. That's like that's the step after you finish basic training where you learn how to do your job and all the technical aspects.
Yeah.
You actually get sent ahead to do your actual job. But in that medium stage, it was a Saturday morning. I had this very vivid dream about a specific character that ends up being in the book in a specific scene. And it was Seherine. So,
okay.
And it's a scene that we don't actually see until book 3.
Okay.
Coming out in August 1st, incidentally.
I'm ready.
Yeah. So it's this. I saw this woman, this woman standing in a snowy forest, wearing this gorgeous like blue cloak, and she was looking at someone, and the emotion in the dream was so powerful. I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't see who she was looking at or what she was looking at. I had no idea. But then I woke up and it just stuck with me. Like, who was that? Why did she appear? What was going on? And me being, I've always been a super curious person. I have to know everything about everything. So it stuck with me like, oh, I wish, like, I got to figure this out. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, no, I'm supposed to be focused on my technical training. I'm going to be this is what I have to do. This is my focus. Mm-hmm. I'm not supposed to be writing. I don't have time for that. But it kept lingering, right? And then a couple of days later, this is going to sound so crazy, but I promise you it is true. A couple of days later, I kind of woke up and I was in that space between like when you're still asleep and you're kind of waking up. It's that weird.
Yeah.
And I remember rolling over in my bed and I saw this kid standing by my bed, and it wasn't like a creepy kid.
Yeah.
It's like, wake up, we got to talk. And this kid wearing this big top hat and this big coat and Artful Dodger type. And I was like, what? Like, who are you? Like, it was very strange. And then, so I was like, no. I don't know what's going on, but I don't have time for this. But I could not get either one of them out of my head. And I had to figure out, they must be connected. Let me figure out how they're connected. And it was just downhill from there.
I was going to say that was your first mistake.
Yeah. So then I had to find time in between my training, but yeah. And that's how the idea started. And then just obviously all the other influences coming in and everything I'd learned about how to tell good stories. One thing I did forget to mention is before I joined the Air Force, I went to film school.
Okay.
I have a degree in film and television production.
Very cool.
So I learned a lot about storytelling there, and in some of the internships I had afterwards. But yeah, and everything I had learned, all of my influences, just over the course of time, the Wickwire Watch was born.
So you've been working on it for a while.
A long time. From the first spark of that idea to publication was 13 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, 14, maybe 14. Yeah, but I will say in that space of time, I also wrote 3 sequels to it. So there are 4 books so far written. Okay,
so there's 4. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a trilogy or a series.
It's going to be a series. So as of now, I've planned for 7.
Wow. Oh, yay.
7 with 4 already done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, and it's funny because when I've listened to so many interviews with established fantasy authors in the indie community, and one of the pieces of advice that they give almost every time is take your time with your first book. Yep. I hear that all the time, and I think it just goes to show, because I've talked to so many authors where they spent so much time developing that first book, and it shows in the final product, which is really awesome. Yeah. So yeah, well, 13, this is a product of many years of percolating and
many years of percolating and multiple drafts. I lost count, and yeah, learning what it is to be a good novelist and a good storyteller and how things should be structured. It was an educational period, like by and large as well. So I needed every ounce of that time, even though I got super impatient and frustrated and wanted to quit. all the time, but I'm so glad I stuck through it.
Yeah. So in that time, when you're writing your first novel, you're not only discovering the story and the characters and the craft of it all, but you're also kind of figuring out what process you use and what works well for you as an individual author. So for you, what does that writing process look like?
So I would say I am a 75% plotter and a 25% pantser discovery writer.
Yep.
I do a lot of notes. I'm a type A personality anyway. Like everything's got to be organized in its place and thought about ahead of time. So writing is no exception. But of course you do have to allow for, if the characters tell you, no, didn't happen like that, we have to go this way, then you go that way. But I do a lot of notes. Yeah.
So which is kind of, I feel like that's kind of the best of both worlds, when you can find that, kind of comfortable in between, where you have your idea and you know where you're going for the most part, but also as authors, that it's very exciting when the characters kind of take on an agency of their own. Exciting, not always. Sometimes you're just like, no. No.
Yes, you are more right than you know. Yes. So when I was discovering these characters and what the story would actually be, I was thinking the other day, it kind of felt to me like that scene in The Hobbit where Bilbo keeps opening his door and there's like 2 more dwarves and there's like a bunch. So I thought, okay, I have my main characters. I got like these 4 people, and then I hear a knock at the door, in my head, and I'd go and answer it, and hello, I'm Chester. Like, what? No, we have enough.
I'll put you over here.
And then another knock, and hey, we're 2 opera singing sisters. Like, really? Like, okay, come on in. And it was, you do have, they have their way, and you have to be faithful to them as well. You have to be faithful to, even though the directions they take you sometimes are
questionable.
Yeah,
for sure.
You do have to relinquish control sometimes, and the story's almost always better for it.
For sure. Well, and it's, we oftentimes talk about collaborative creativity, and to me, authors and characters are a creative collaboration, because if you give those characters agency, they're going to take it and they're going to give you their opinion about things. And that's good, because it shows that they're coming to into their own life. But sometimes you have to have a little tug of war. I wanted to say we've got some people. Hi, Zen. Penny's going to come back and watch the replay. Mike Molman, another Spiffbo competitor, he's Becoming a Druid is his novel. Anitha, you need to read this book. Put it on your TBR. And then we have some family members in the chat.
Stephanie.
Love it. And then Alex Pierce, who wrote one of my other favorite indies from this year, Blood of Crows.
I watched your interview with him. Awesome. Hi, Alex.
Yeah. Man, it's so exciting to me to see what indie fantasy has to offer right now. Like, it's so exciting to see how it's just doing exploding. But yeah, going back to characters for a second, because there's a character that I think a lot of people are really going to be intrigued by that we haven't mentioned yet. So was there a particular influence that Isaac Caradoc came from?
Influence.
Or did he just kind of show up, knock on the door? Or he probably let himself in, I would assume.
I turn around, he's already sitting at my table.
All right.
Yeah. So, yeah, where did he come from? You could ask me that question about most of these characters, and I'd be like, I don't know, they just showed up, which sounds super unprofessional of me, maybe, but
hey, they work.
I will tell you that another part of my process involves casting my characters, because I do come from a film background.
Yep.
I'm a super visual person as well. That's how I learn, and I don't know, it just helps me kind of ground me. So all of my major characters and most of my secondary ones have been cast with. I have pictures, of the actors and actresses who play them, and all I have to do is think of who I cast for Caradoc, and he's right there.
Nice.
I don't even know if I should say, because I don't want to get sued.
I highly doubt that's going to be a problem.
Okay. Well, so I always think of Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
And just the lovely way a lot of his characters are mysterious, but also they have a vulnerability to them as well. I get tired of heroes and main characters who seem invincible or are afraid of being vulnerable, because that's not cool or that makes them seem weak. But at the same time, he has a lot of qualities that are worrisome, maybe is the word.
Yes.
Yeah. That's another thing. I wanted to make sure all my characters are very well-rounded, but he came very early in the process. And I saw right away he had an interesting relationship with ink. So a lot of him was built off that as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. They're kind of two sides of the same coin in some ways.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever you have characters like that, you're going to have some headbutting.
Yeah.
Because usually the things they don't like about each other are reflections of their own flaws. Yeah. Another Spiffbo writer, Palmer Pickering for Heliotrope is her novel, friend of our channel. She's awesome. Okay, so with character design, where you've kind of talked a little bit about, you hear a knock on the door, you have a new character comes in, says, "Hi, I'm part of this story."
Yeah.
What do you do in terms of characters design? You cast the characters. How do you just kind of start writing them in and develop them from there? Do you write a page of notes on each character? What does that look like?
Usually that happens in the plotting stage.
Okay.
So before I've even sat down to write. I don't think any characters come in after I've already started writing. Usually they've made themselves, they've made their presence known before the process has started.
Take a number, sit down.
And I don't do a whole biography of them, but what I kind of do is have a conversation with them in my head, or okay, tell me about yourself, tell me this and that. And some of them will talk freely, and some of them are like, "I don't trust you yet. I'll tell you more later," which is just as frustrating for me as it is for the readers, believe me. But another part of the process. But yes, a lot of notes from what I can get from them when it's the right time to get it from them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So it's almost like you're job interviewing characters a little bit. So were there any characters that as you were working through the book that kind of morphed and changed through the process of writing, or did they stay pretty true to the original image or vision for them?
They're pretty consistently staying true to the original vision as far as initially. I will tell you the Whistlers, Martin and Harriet, and at the start they were going to be much older, like 60s, 70s, like an older couple.
Yep.
And I found out soon enough that was not going to work for a variety of reasons, which will become clear later in the series. But that was just an age thing. But when I first started writing the story all those years ago, the person we meet first after Mr. Bash was not Spindler initially. Spindler was not in it at all.
Okay.
It was a bumbling, comical inspector who went up to Bash's house and was actually inspecting the crime scene or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yes, we have this, our sub-interviewer host.
So yeah, and it was really comical and he was kind of clueless and incompetent at his job, and that's how I kind of wrote it initially. And then I I let a friend read it who gave me feedback on how various reasons why that was not a great idea for the tone I was shooting for, and for how that can put people off.
Yeah.
And so I took his comments to heart, and so he became Spindler.
Okay.
Who is still kind of comical in a way, but much more like.
There's still those moments in the book where you're just like,
yeah.
Spindler, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that makes sense though, from the perspective of your influences. Like that's a very British storytelling, archetype. But yeah, I can see definitely where pulling back with that was a good choice for the tone of the story, for sure.
But going forward, how the characters continue to surprise me are in their relationships with each other. That's been the thing that's changed the most with the process of writing the books. I can point out a particular scene where really that highlights it. Without spoiling it, how do I? So there's a scene where it's like 2/3 of the way through the book where they're all sitting at the dining table. Something kind of upsetting has just happened, and they're all kind of processing it all together. And there's this point where Ink brings up this paper he has with his address on it. And Caradoc's like, let me see it. He's sitting on the other side of the table. So the note starts getting passed around. And I feel like sometimes I'm in the scene, like I'm just sitting there in the corner and I'm writing what happened.
Yep.
Around. Okay, who is he passed it to next? Okay, who's sitting next to him? Okay. And it was going around the table. And I remember I was sitting there writing the scene, and then all of a sudden Harriet got it, and it stopped. And I'm like sitting there waiting for her, like, what do you pass it? Go. And she was like, no. And as an author, I was like, what? Like, what is this? And from what happens then on was how do I even describe it? That opened the door to so many other things that made the story so much richer. Not only mostly in relationship with how the characters were interacting with each other and how they felt about what each other was doing. And you'll see later in the series how important that becomes. But that was, so when I say I'm a 75% plotter, 25% discovery writer, that's the super important, like 25% stuff I let happen. I don't try to push back anymore. So I would say that's the only major kind of changes that get made as I go along. Those moments that surprise me like that.
Yeah, it's such a thrilling feeling though when you have one of those breakthrough moments. You're like, oh my gosh, and all of a sudden all of these pieces start fitting together and making more sense. And yeah, so you decided to self-publish.
Yes.
And what was that? Just something that you had always kind of thought that when I publish my book, I want to do self-pub, or did you start with querying, or did you just kind of fall into it? How did you get to that point?
So I did try to go traditional route at first. I did send out, I don't know, maybe 24 queries or something like that.
Okay.
And I got some bites. I got some full manuscript requests, partial manuscript requests, some good feedback.
Nice.
But it was always like, this is not right for us at this time. Thank you. And like, there was no explanation or, but I wasn't heartbroken because I was wary of the publishing world for the same reason I had grown wary of the entertainment industry. So I mentioned before that I went to film school. When I graduated, I moved out to LA and I lived there for a couple of years. And it was a great experience for a lot of reasons. I learned a lot. But that is a place and an industry where it seems like everyone you meet is kind of always looking at you and thinking, okay, what can I get from this person? What connection do they have that I can have? And like, you have to go to all the parties and rub elbows with everyone. And I see the necessity for that. But I as a super introvert, I was looking the other way. Like, this is not this is not for me. Like, I wish it could work out between us, but it's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of like, I felt like it was a lot of trying to get your foot in the door. And then at every step along the way, there were people like, looking at you over their glasses going, who are you? Why do we like this gatekeeping kind of thing?
Yeah.
And again, I understand the reason for gatekeeping, but when you're on the other side of the gate,
yeah, it's
so, and I have the same feelings about the traditional publishing. Of course, before indie publishing became a really big thing, that was the only way to go, really, aside from vanity publishing. But
right.
But I wasn't crushed at the rejections because I was like, you don't want me, I don't want you.
yeah.
But at the same time, I thought, well, that's kind of my shot for getting these published because, you know, that's the only, I had the same bias that a lot of people do. Like, unless it's traditionally published, you're not a real author. It doesn't really count. Quality's not there. And so all of that whole world changed just in the last decade or so. And then I had a friend in 2021 who started asking me, like, why don't you publish these yourself? And I kept pushing him off, like, no, I'm just writing these for me, and it's for my friends and family. It's fine. He's like, no, look into it. Like, it's a whole thing now. So I did, and he was right, and I was blown away. And I am so glad there was another route to go because it's so different. And then that was around the same time, I think they were doing the Random House. They were trying to do that merger, but it was getting held up in court, and all that information started coming out on, we don't really know what we're doing either. We just publish what we think is going to be popular, but we don't know. And furthermore, I started listening to podcasts of traditionally published authors who were deciding to go indie or hybrid. They were, like, they had it all, right? But they were rejecting it. And for all the reasons I started hearing, one of which was huge for me, was that if you do manage to get your first book in a series sold to somebody, if they decide they don't want to continue with it, they'll let you go and keep the rights.
Right.
And then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I thought of that scene from The Mandalorian where, I don't remember if it was in season 1 or 2, but Mando has Grogu and he's like, where I go, he goes. And I
this is my child.
With me with my arm around ink going, where he goes, I go. Like, no, you're staying with me. We're going to stick together and we're going to do this indie publishing thing. And I'm so happy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the thing that I think is one of the major draws of indie publishing, is that, you know, we're not tied to the marketing trends. We're not, you know, we don't have to set boundaries around genre blending and, you know, all of those things, which is really liberating. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing such a draw for readers to read indie, because it's new and there's fresh ideas and it's not, you know, oh, we're doing this trend this year. You know, there's a gazillion trends in indie at any given time.
And another thing that really changed my mind was thinking, well, like, we don't have this, it doesn't seem like we have the same stigma towards, like, I'm an indie filmmaker, I'm an indie musician.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is that fine? And being an indie author isn't fine. It's getting more fine now, but there is still that, you know, a little bit.
Very much.
But yeah. More power to indies.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and so you've been in the community for a little bit now. Like, are you starting to kind of dip your toes into the author and reader community?
A little. Like, I'm still a baby. I feel like a baby author. I just published Wickwire Watch last October, so it's been 9 months. And I very much feel like I'm the new kid at school, and I just walked in the cafeteria and, like, people were like, who is that? Like, but by and large, it's been super welcoming. And I love this kind of mantra that there's room for everyone, that I keep.
Yes.
And
the tide raises all the ships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just fills my heart with joy. And I I couldn't be happier. I'm still trying to navigate how to do things. Like I told you before we went on, I just got on Discord yesterday, and
You got this.
Right. Well, I started off by mistaking the text box for the search box. I have to like cover it quickly with a question. But
you know, it's funny though, because you would not believe how many people are like, you know, commenting like, I'm here, I don't know how to use anything. Like there are a lot of people that Discord's a learning curve, just like anything else, any other social platform. And
yes.
Yeah, it's a little bit intimidating when you first get into it, and it doesn't look the way all the other social media platforms look.
Yes.
So yeah, well, I'm excited that you're trying it out. That's awesome. I was going to go back to something with the trad and indie a little bit, but Palmer had said totally with you on the trad versus indie. I'm so happy to have self-published. I'm having so much fun and meeting so many great people. Yes. That's just it. Like, you know, the idea of, I love the metaphor of walking into the cafeteria and there's all these tables with all these people that already know each other. And you're kind of like, hey guys, which I felt like that when I first started coming back to BookTube and then getting into the author community. But the cool part is when you walk into the indie community, instead of having all these tables where people kind of give you the side eye and then like avoid eye contact, you have people vying for you to sit at their table. Like people are just like, hey, like come, here's a spot. Like, and everybody's just, I love how it's such a diverse space of people, but everyone for the most part is very supportive and respectful. And I'm excited for you to be a part of it because it's been really uplifting and it's boosted my confidence as a writer like crazy. So I'm glad to have you here.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, and I've described myself before as a super introvert. I think that still applies across social media as well. Still trying to figure out when to talk and who to talk to and like, you know, but it's a learning process like anything else. Yeah,
totally. And, you know, it goes both ways. I still have the problem where I will say something and I'm like, I was totally like diverting the conversation there, wasn't I? Sorry. So it goes both ways.
And Twitter is like, yeah, I'm still learning, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago I posted on Twitter like, hey, my monthly newsletter's out. If you know, go check it out. And immediately I like lost 5 like followers, and I was like, oh, they don't like newsletter reminders. Okay, noted.
Which is, I don't know if it's like, that's weird because I know like for the most part, the newsletters I think in the indie community actually do pretty well. So. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just, you didn't need those 5 people anyway.
Yeah, that's totally that. I didn't need you guys either.
Fine. Yeah, Alex, Trad Pub is now trying to hop on trends started in indie. Cozy is definitely a good example of that. Yep. Legends and lattes is the thing now. Yep. Fazila. Hi, Fazila.
Hi.
Okay, so you're very comfortable in self-pub at this point.
At this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. So I want to kind of take a tiny little bit. I feel like we could talk for 3 hours, so I'm trying to stay somewhat on script. I want to dip into Spiffbo because we've talked about self-pub in the community a little bit. So you heard about Spiffbo somewhere and decided to throw Ink's hat in the ring. So how did you find out about it? And I know it's only been a month. Yeah. It's only been a month. It feels like a lot has happened in a month.
Yeah.
But how has it been for you so far? Are you like, what do you hope to get out of it?
Well, Spiffbo has been, I think more than anything else, my big introduction into the community, and not only me introducing myself and Ink to everyone, but also learning how it works and how people interact with each other. I think when I was researching, you know, how do authors market their books, it was like a marketing kind of tangent I was going on, but I saw someone say, hey, you should enter your books in contests. I'm like, cool, what contests are there? So I think I just did some kind of search on indie contests, and that one was like the top of the list, like get into this one if you can. So I bookmarked Mark Lawrence's page, and I was like checking it every day for what date, what time.
I don't want to miss it.
I had my alarm set off so I could be right here when it opened, and I'm so glad I was.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm terrified of trying to enter next year.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't crash or anything, but
but you got in?
I did. I got in, and my expectations not super high again because I am a baby author and nobody knows who I am, but I thought, hey, this has as good a chance as anything, so we'll see what happens. And I've seen people mention it along the way. It's not really the outcome that matters. It's more about the friendships you make along the way. Right. Which is really true. Absolutely true. So it's been a learning experience, and there's those moments of nerve-wracking. Oh my gosh, they just released the new results. Like, oh my gosh, maybe you tell yourself this doesn't matter. Who cares? But at the same time, you're
I mean, you're sending your kid off to their first school, and like, I hope everybody likes them, and I hope they do well, and like have a good time. I mean, it is very, especially when you see somebody in the Spiffbo Discord or on Twitter post like, oh, first, more Spiffbo cuts, and you're like, and then you're like, oh, it wasn't my vlog. It wasn't my vlog. Okay.
It's nerve-wracking, but it's been so good. It's so many levels. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah, it's the exposure, even just in meeting other authors and getting in front of a bunch of reviewers. And I mean, that's how I found Wickwire Watch, is I made myself a TBR and then Andrew added to it. So I mean, I wish you the absolute best of luck. In my opinion, Wickwire definitely is a contender for sure. It's very, I remember getting to the end of it and being like, now that's a debut. Like, just really, because I read a lot of debut novels, and like, I'm constantly amazed by the level of talent in debut authors. But I always get really excited when I find one that I'm like, this is like really, this one's like starting, has a head start already. So
I'm glad you think so. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Fazila, the indie community has been one of the best in positive space. The variety of content and ideas that is coming out of the community is the best thing. Absolutely. Well, that was kind of like, I was trying to describe Wickwire to a friend of mine, because I was reading it when we were visiting at his house. And I was like, I don't know how to describe this. It's like if you take Oliver Twist and put it in Howl's Moving Castle. Like, that's as close as I can get right now. And like, where else are you going to find books that you can like blend those two things together, and it works, and it's exciting, and it's fun and fresh and interesting, because you're pulling in, elements that we're familiar with, but really putting a fun, unique spin on it because of all of the individual influences that you've had as a person, as a writer now. So it's really exciting to see that.
Yeah. And I always say, write the book you want to see on your shelf, I think, is
exactly
writing advice. And I love Dickens, love Dickens and Austen, and my favorite book of all time is Jane Eyre.
Okay.
But I also I always thinking, well, how can I combine these things, and has anyone ever done that? And I'm sure I am not the first, but I can't think of anything else. So it is hard to describe and explain to people. It's like, Oliver Twist with magic. I don't know, but I'm so glad the indie community provides a space for everyone. There's room for everyone. There's time for everyone. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. My friend Kay wants to know if you have a mandolin in the corner. I just noticed that.
Yes, it is a mandolin. I play mandolin. I've played it since I was 15. I love folk music,
nice.
Music Americana, which is another big story influence for me, is folk music. Last couple of years, I've been getting into English folk music. So
okay.
Like Kate Rusby and Jim Moray and Sam Kelly, they do modern interpretations of old, like, English, like, folk tales and highwaymen stories and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to glean from music. as well.
100%. So do you make playlists for your book?
Yes.
We are going to be friends.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Kay is also a musician, and she plays violin. So
great!
I do too. So
I can't play it very well, but
violin is a tricky instrument. We're gonna have like there needs to be some big indie fantasy convention where we can all get together and like do panels and go out and have jam sessions afterwards.
That sounds like heaven. I think you're describing heaven right now.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me.
Let's do
it. Proficient.
No. Adequate, maybe, but
I have my grandfather played guitar and mandolin, and him and his brothers and sisters used to get together and play together, and my family also, several of us play Appalachian Mountain dulcimers.
Oh, nice.
So it's been a while. Like I'd have to reteach myself how to play at this point, but yeah, music is a big deal in our house too.
Well, now you have a homework assignment for our jam session whenever.
There you go. I'll dust off the dulcimer. Okay, so I want to dip into the phrase "write what you know" is something that, I can't even remember the first time I heard that. But what, outside of the influences, what are some of your personal real life experiences that you pull into your writing?
Well, I would say a lot of, like you said, there's the influences, but a lot of things that you experience just living life kind of creep into it inevitably. Mm-hmm. But also I found that there's kind of a reverse thing going on with writing. I don't know if you have the same experience, but I'm trying to figure out the right order to say it, with life imitating art. Like you write the thing and then you end up like experiencing it later, and or it becomes more real to you. So that happens, but also that phrase, write what you know, I've always had a wary relationship with that phrase, because it can be misinterpreted, and you can think, well, I don't have an experience being a knight fighting a dragon, so I guess I can tell a story about that. So I kind of like to tweak it in my head, that phrase, as in you will write what you know. And so what you learn over the years, or through your own study or education or observation of the world around you, is all good soil for planting stories.
Absolutely.
So I would say what I really lean into personally is people. I'm fascinated by people. I am a super introvert, but I keep my ears open. And I like to talk to people one-on-one about their stories and their histories, and tell me about why you joined the Navy. Tell me about why you decided to live here, or tell me, figuring out why people act the way they do, and observing relationships they have with other people, and just being interested and being a curious person. That is a fantastic way to not only be a better writer, but to write better characters and more realistic characters, right? So be curious, be inquisitive, and be a good listener. That's another huge one. Huge. Being a listener as a person, just every day, keeping your ears open, being genuine with people, and being, reciprocating. So I bring that, and I don't mean it to sound like I'm psychoanalyzing everyone. That's not what I mean. I'm just a very naturally curious person. I like to get to know everyone around me. So I bring that into, that plays super well whenever I get a character knocking on the door, and it's like, all right, let's
sit down. Here's my couch.
And I do the same thing. Like, okay, now tell me why you took that key and you put it on your hand. Like, why are you doing that? What is that about? And tell tell me about these scars on your face, and if you're comfortable with that, you know, you have to make sure they're comfortable. But yeah, so that's been huge. And then the other thing I would say about you will write what you know is even more basic. If you are someone who is passionate about writing a good story, being a good storyteller, make that your education. Read a bunch of books, read a bunch of craft books. Other people who've been doing this a long time and have things to say about it. Get yourself a copy of Strunk and White. If you don't know anything about grammar and punctuation, as painful as it may be, and it can be painful, do that. Like, study it, take notes. I did it like it was a college course, and I went in the class. But and even when I'm enjoying a film or another book or a video game, video games have some of the most fantastic stories that are being told right now.
Yes.
But enjoy those things, but also take a moment to consider why you enjoy them. Kind of pull them apart. Like, what is it that really makes the story work for me? Take some time to do that analysis.
For sure. Yeah. There's so much. Sociology is such a fun thing, and just being, you know, I think that the interpersonal relationships between your characters are really what creates the heart of the story, right? Yep. And that's where having those observations and experiences with such a wide range of people, like talking to as many people as you can, wherever you can meet them, and hearing their stories and about their life and about what they've experienced that maybe you haven't, because that just continues to give you more and more to put into your story and to build realistic, authentic characters that are interesting to read about, because people are interesting. Yeah.
That was a note I put for myself on my bulletin board that I looked at every time I sat down to write. Focus on the humanity, not the spectacle.
Yeah.
I don't know how many stories do we see these days that they're all flash and no substance. Like, that's not, maybe that's what sells and gets money in the coffers, but that's not what feeds people's hearts and souls.
Right.
So yeah.
That's the fun diversion things where we go and we watch a story where it's just, you know, things are blowing up and but it's the characters are the things we keep with us for the most part. Exactly. For a lot of us. I have to always put in the exception for the people that are like, it's about the plot.
Sure, of course. I'm not saying no plot. I'm just saying the characters are big. That's what I take out of everything.
Alex. So Ren, who is Alex's protagonist, is a bit light-fingered, for sure. Which so is Ink. They'd probably get along great.
I mean, nothing is wasted, Alex. So, you know, take whatever experience you can get and mine it. So I'm not going to tell you no.
Alex is quite. Yeah, we just won't. We won't tell. It's
no,
fine.
No.
What are we advocating on this channel? I want to talk a little bit about the magic system, because I feel like there's so many layers to it, and trying to keep it as spoiler free as I can. But you've got kind of you're even dipping into different realms within your universe in this story, and you've got kind of almost like a death magic. Would it be fair to call it that? Portal. You've got some portal magic stuff going on, and I mean, there's so many different pieces to that. So how did you come up with what you wanted for that and start organizing all of that into a magic system?
Well, one thing I did consciously make a decision on was that I didn't want the magic to be anything super flashy. There is a time and place for that kind of thing, but for mine, I wanted it to be kind of more subtle, not necessarily in the background, but I know I'm not the first author who's done this, but I came up with a system where magic is kind of akin to prayer. It's more a spiritual thing that happens, and it's not based on words or, you know, there's no wands or anything like that. it's kind of spiritually based. The power level, I guess, of a magic user depends on how much faith and discipline they have. That's the basis of it. And I'm not saying that prayer is magic. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there is something mysterious about prayer. I don't think anyone would argue that there is a mysterious element to it. And I liked that with a magic system as well, that there was something mysterious to it. I don't prefer all of the systems and the world building and everything about everything be explained to the fullest extent. I know some people love that. Some people demand that, but I don't like it. I like a healthy amount of mystery and things. I'm okay with that. So that's where the magic system started, and then there is some portal magic as well, and I love portal magic. Like the idea that this world is not all there is so intriguing on so many levels. And to go a step beyond that, the general saying of not everything is as it seems is also a huge thing that came into play in the books and in the world. I keep looking up because I've got a poster of my 3 main characters right here, and they're looking at me, and I'm like having a yeah. So portal magic is something I've always loved, so I wanted to incorporate it, and we are going to get more into it further down in the series for sure.
Okay,
I promise. But yeah, so nothing too flashy. Definitely a soft magic system.
Yep.
And the other thing that has always bothered me in stories is how evil is sometimes dealt with. And what I mean by that is, how are we going to take these demons down? Oh, I have these special bullets. Like, no. I don't care about bullets. I don't care what the bullets are made of or what's in them. Like, that's a spiritual. You gotta pivot to a different realm and media and means. And I hadn't seen that a ton. So that was another thing where I came up with the idea of the key. So on his hand, it's not like he's fist fighting with it or like shooting lasers out of it. It's connected. It's on his left hand because it's connected to his heart, which has other repercussions. But it's a magic and a system that has to do more with the emotional and spiritual and kind of mental realm, I guess, more than physical. So yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was really cool, and I was very excited to see that the second book was called The Spider Key.
Yes,
because I'm like, awesome, love it. We're gonna get more of that. I think it is. Magic systems for me have never been something that make or break a story, but I think they can, like, whether it's a hard system, soft system, etc. Like, as long as it's supporting the world and the characters instead of taking it over. Like, as long as it works and it works well with the characters and whatever else you're trying to do. But I think the magic system that you have within at least the first book that I've read definitely kind of fits in with the overall tone of the rest of the story and the characters. And I loved how Caradoc is kind of he's sort of a gatekeeper in a way. And that was really cool. I love gatekeeper characters in general. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that expands in the next few books. And speaking of that, so Blue Flames is coming out, you said August 1st?
Yes, August 1st.
I need to get reading. So 7 books. Do you have kind of a general timeline of what you're thinking?
So like I mentioned before, 4 books have been written. Before I even started publishing, the first 4 were done. And when I say done, I mean they still need to go through an editor and all that. But so the 4th one's, I just have to add a couple more chapters to it, and it will be out probably early next year.
Okay.
For the 4th one. But as far as the rest of them, they haven't even been born yet. I mean, I have pages and pages of notes, but I don't really know how long it will take. I'm thinking once the 4th one gets published, it'll be like a once a year kind of pace.
Sure.
But I'm not 100% sure yet, but we'll see.
Yeah. So is that something where, I know something that I'm really holding on to right now, and it's a blessing and a curse as the author. When you have the idea and you have the story in your head, and there's those scenes at the very end that you know how certain things end and you know how certain characters end up, and you are the only person holding that for like years sometimes. Do you have some of those scenes where you're just like, you cannot wait to get to the end so that other people like can experience what you've had in your head this whole time?
Yes, definitely. So I will tell you, the end of book 2, I will tell you right now, it's upsetting. It's a cliffhanger. And if
I'll read it very close to August.
you may be upset with me, but it's totally in keeping with the story. It's just, read it close to August. But when you get to book 3, it's just it'll be worth it. I promise. The pain will be worth it.
I love the sound of that. I'm very masochistic when it comes to reading my books. I love emotional wreckage everywhere all the time.
Oh, great.
So
Well, then
I will still be mad probably. Okay, I'll probably send you a very upset Twitter DM.
I can take it. It's fine.
Well, I mean, talking about that, what we talk about this a lot in the author interviews I do. There's kind of this removal of the barrier within the community between the authors and the readers, reviewers, and like it's very accessible. We're all very accessible to each other. Do you find that exciting to be like right in the like space of the people reading the series, or is that daunting to you?
At first it was definitely daunting because I didn't know how people were going to react at all. But now I love it because, like you say, there are no barriers, and I'm free to, I can get, a lovely message from someone on Goodreads who tells me how much I love it. And then I can take that message and put it in my little encouragements file that I can open whenever I need it. And I love it. I love like I told you before, the idea of gatekeeping for these industries. Again, I see the necessity for it, but I do think it's on the scale of doing more harm than good, at least these days. So I absolutely love that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. I'm so nosy. It's awful. Like I want to know. I'm like I'm good at, like, I know that there are some barriers, and that goes into the whole reviewers and authors in the reviewer space and all that kind of stuff. But it's fun when somebody posts a picture and like, hey, I'm rating the Wickwire Watch now, and you're like, all right, I hope you love it, and then you just kind of tap on your desk.
Totally not obsessively check your phone every.
No, of course not. No. I haven't checked Goodreads in at least 10 minutes. It's fine. So once you have, the 7-book series, like that's a pretty big undertaking.
Yep.
Do you have other ideas that you want to explore after that, or are you just not thinking about it yet?
There are a few ideas percolating. I do have some notes on some other things I'd like to explore later. But at the same time, I've been with these characters for so long, and I feel like I don't want it to end because I don't want to say goodbye to them. But of course, you don't want to drag something on forever. It has to come to an end. But so I do have some ideas. Nothing definitive yet, but we'll see. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Okay. I appreciate that. I mean, you've got time. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and, one of the things that we talk about a lot in fantasy is once you've created this whole world and a magic system, and like there's so much creation that goes into fantasy novels, you might as well use what you have, right? So that's why I'm sure you see a lot of fantasy authors just going, what if I write a prequel or
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So last question I have for you is going back to pre-debut, have not published her book yet, Jackie. She needs a piece of advice from Jackie now. What would you say?
So the first thing I would tell her is not necessarily a piece of advice, but a word of encouragement. And it's the same words that are sitting on this little tiny sign in the corner I have on my wall. And they say, everything will be okay. So I would tell her that everything will be okay. And then the actual piece of advice I would give her is learn all you can, but also trust your own instincts.
Very good advice.
Yeah, because everyone's going to have their own opinion on what to do every step along the way. This is how you should find your cover designer. This is how you should write your opening chapter. This is how you should end your book. Everyone's got a million different opinions about every aspect. And take those, synthesize them, filter them, learn all you can from everybody. Absolutely. Take notes. But do also trust your own instincts. And they will not lead you astray.
Yeah. I'm going to clip that and be like, advice for new authors. Yeah, well, Jackie, thank you so much for spending your Saturday chatting on my channel. For everybody in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, down in the description box, there is a link to Jackie's website, which is gorgeous, by the way. And also a link to buy your copy of the Wickwire Watch, because if you haven't already added it to your TBR or bought your own copy of it yet, that's something you should do. So I'm very excited to read Spider Key, hopefully soon. Very soon. I actually did not realize that that the third book was coming out that soon. So now I'm panicking, like, oh my gosh, I got to get to the Spider Key quick. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Jackie. And thank you to everybody in the chat for hanging out with us and chatting it up. And best of luck in Spiffbo 9.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. See you guys later.